Going into 2021, I had been to every Cedar Fair park at least once, except for the ones in the North Midwest. I already did a video on Michigan's adventure, check out that link down below. But the other one was Valleyfair, a park seemingly snubbed by enthusiasts and Cedar Fair alike. I made my way up to Minnesota in July, and spent a day at one of Cedar Fair's original parks, and I came away with some pretty strong opinions about the place. These are my honest opinions of the coasters of Valleyfair and the park as a whole, based on my experience on Sunday, July 11th, 2021. Some people may come to Valleyfair for the ambiance, the Snoopy theming, I don't know. But I went there for the coasters, so let's look at those first. My first ride of the day was on Mad Mouse, the Aero Wild Mouse from 1999. I've had great rides on some of these Aero mice. Psycho Mouse at California's Great America was my favorite mouse for a long time, and Mad Mouse at Michigan's Adventure blew me away with the laterals and ejector airtime. The one at Valleyfair was pretty forgettable. It wasn't bad or anything, just uneventful. Okay, the drop off the downward turn was kinda jarring, but that was really the only forceful part of the ride. I rode this first because it gets the worst line in the park. The GP like it and it has bad capacity. If you get to Valleyfair, I recommend riding this at rope drop to avoid waiting an hour for a mediocre mouse. I put this number 6 of the park's 8 coasters. Just a note, I did not ride the Cosmic Coaster, a Zamperla single helix powered coaster. And even though I was very close to going over there and getting a ride, my shame stepped in and said don't do it. So I left that credit on the table. I'll still mark this at number 8 in the park. Next up was Renegade, my number 1 bucket list coaster in the USA over the past couple years. Everyone raves about this 2007 GCI, and I wanted to see what it was all about. I'm not the biggest fan of GCI, but when they get it right, it could be awesome and possibly top 50 worthy. We got a pretty empty train, rode the back row, and I gotta say, it lived up to most of the hype. That first drop is very unique, that 91-foot S-turn, and from there, this thing was out of control. I got about 2 fistfuls of room on my lap bar, so I got to experience all the airtime, and there was a ton of it. In the back row, there were a bunch of moments where the train whips you laterally to the ground, and in between those airtime moments, there were a ton of quick transitions. This reminded me a lot of Gold Striker, but with better airtime. But like Gold Striker, this thing is crazy rough. I think it was even rougher than Gold Striker, which is saying a lot. If Valleyfair could get some retracking done, or maybe even use some Titan track, I think this could be an elite coaster. Still, it found its way into my top 50. It's my number 2 GCI, only behind Mystic Timbers, and it's the best coaster in the park. My one regret was getting just the one ride. I wanted to get a ride after it warmed up a little bit more, but with the crowds and the early closure, I didn't have time. Moving on to the park's other wooden coaster, High Roller. This opened with the park in 1976, made by the Opus Group, who I never heard of, but that's for a good reason. This was their only coaster, and this Minnesota-based company, then known as the Rowenhorse Corporation, built most of Valleyfair. This L-shaped wooden coaster stands 70 feet tall, and it's got almost 3,000 feet of track. This thing reminds me a lot of Screaming Eagle at Six Flags St. Louis. That one is a little taller and longer, but they have very similar ride experiences. I thought High Roller was very smooth for an old wooden coaster, and you can see the brand new track on the first drop, which I'm sure helped a lot. Compared to Renegade's jackhammering, I was happy to see the park taking care of this woody. Just like Screaming Eagle, I got little to no airtime on this. It was just a nice ride with hill after hill. Unlike Screaming Eagle, I felt the ride time was kinda short also. So in the end, High Roller is a nice enjoyable ride, but don't expect anything from it. I have this ranked at number 5 in the park. Moving on to Wild Thing, the Morgan Hyper, and probably the most iconic coaster in the park. This lime green 207-foot monster dominates the skyline, and it greets everyone coming into the parking lot. I had just ridden Mamba at Worlds of Fun, and I wasn't all that impressed, so I was expecting next to nothing with Wild Thing. I got the back row, and actually got some decent airtime on the first drop. That first hill after the drop is pretty small, so it looks like it could be a speed hill like you see on the RMCs or B&Ms, but it had no airtime. Come on, Morgan. Wild Thing is just like any of the other Morgan Hypers. Basically a supersized mine train with pointless turns, but it is a good showcase of speed. You're absolutely flying, and when you hit some of those awkward Morgan transitions when you're going that fast, it can toss you around a little bit. The trims on the mid-course hit extremely hard, and there is zero airtime on the run of hills at the end. I did like the tunnel though, that was a nice touch. But it makes me wonder if they could just lay off those brakes a little bit. That finale could be amazing. Even a little bit of airtime would be nice, but they just have them set to the point where you get none. I have this third in the park. We went over to Corkscrew, the Aero Looper from 1980, and the first thing I noticed was the great setting. This is right around a lake in the center of the park, so just like the one at Cedar Point, this has a great centralized setting to work around. Actually, I lied. The first thing I noticed was how long the line was, but it kinda makes sense. This is the only coaster at Valleyfair that has inversions. That's hard to wrap my head around. I'm not even sure how that's possible, but that loop and those two corkscrews, that's it when it comes to going upside down at Valleyfair. So the GP sees a coaster that goes upside down and they flock to it. As for the ride itself, I thought it was smooth and enjoyable. Its layout is very basic, but that was fine for 1980. The airtime hill after the loop didn't do much, compared to the one over at Cedar Point that's kinda jarring. It's not a bad coaster at all. To be honest, this park doesn't have a bad coaster, so I had to put it down at 7th place, the lowest ranked adult coaster. And it sucks to do it, but something had to bring up the rear. It was either this or Mad Mouse. One coaster I really wanted to get on was Excalibur. This is located all the way in the back of the park. One of those weird aero mine trains on steroids, a lot like Gemini at Cedar Point. This was closed early in the day, but it opened up once they got the staffing, and we headed back there. This is a 1989 steel track wood support hybrid, and it gets rave reviews from enthusiasts, so naturally I was pretty hyped. I got the back row, and went through that 2,400 feet of weird track. This is such a bizarre ride, and such a weird request for Aero to build. The word janky comes to mind right away when thinking about Excalibur. Gemini is graceful with those drops and turns, and Excalibur is low to the ground and out of control. I got no airtime on the first drop. I got some on the second drop after the turn, and one final good floater moment on the hill after the helix. Aside from that, it was full of fast turns, and with those janky angles, it was pretty chaotic. It's a very short ride, and I thought it was fun, but it was nothing special. I thought maybe this could be a dark horse candidate for my top 50, but it wasn't even close. It was just okay. I have this 4th in the park, just behind Wild Thing. Also, if you want to get shots of this ride from the park, don't plan on it. If there were any angles of the layout, I didn't see them. We left the park for a while to go to the Mall of America, and we came back for one final credit, Steel Venom. This 2003 impulse coaster is known for the holding brake on the back spike, but it wasn't working when I was there. This is that split-second pause where it holds the train in place while you're face down, and you get to see everyone's legs fly forward. No big deal. I've done the holding brake in the past and it's pretty fun, but it's nothing to get too excited about. This is your typical impulse coaster, but these are pretty awesome. I hadn't been on a normal impulse coaster in 3 years, so I enjoyed all the forces. You have the positive G's on the pull-up into the vertical spikes. You have those awesome booster launches as you pass through the station, and I seem to love those way too much. And I just really enjoyed the experience. This was easily my second favorite ride of the day, so I'll give Steel Venom the number 2 spot in the park. That's it for the coasters. I only got one ride on each one, and since I did this out of order, here are the final rankings. Renegade was far and away number 1. And as for Excalibur, I wasn't overly impressed. I thought that should have taken the number 2 spot, but all in all, not a bad coaster in the park. Now, some thoughts on the park itself. This place is beautiful. Everything has its place and it looks great. There were only 2 weird parts of the park, one being the area in the front of the park with Steel Venom and Delirious. It looks like it was just slapped into the corner of the parking lot. The other weird part was Excalibur, way off the beaten path behind the water park. The park is essentially long and skinny, wedged between Highway 101 and the Minnesota River, but there is a lot of room around it to expand. It's not like Cedar Fair is itching to buy more land though. They haven't gotten a new major coaster in 14 years. I wish Cedar Fair would give this park just a little bit more attention to keep it relevant. And I know it's all about geography and attendance in the bottom line, but this is a founding member of the Cedar Fair chain. Give it a little respect. Still, I would put this on the level of Great America if it had just one more standout coaster. Something to help out Renegade. Something better than an Impulse as the number 2 coaster in the park. Renegade is similar to Gold Striker, but Valleyfair has no answer for Railblazer. That being said, their supporting lineup can stack up to Great America's second tier, like High Roller against Grizzly, or Excalibur against Flight Deck. I was really impressed with this place overall, but I still have to put it in the lower tier of Cedar Fair parks. But I left with a much better impression than Worlds of Fun, and even slightly better than Dorney Park. The operations weren't that impressive. Corkscrew and Wild Thing had very slow dispatches, but I did appreciate the 2 tray knobs on most of the coasters except Excalibur, and that was a walk-on anyway. I also apparently went on the busiest day of 2021 up to that point. There were about 15,000 people there. I got on most of the rides early to avoid the crowds, but that place was packed and it made re-rides impossible, especially with that 7 p.m. close time, not to mention the 2 hours where I left to go to the Mall of America. As for what's needed for this park, like I said before, they have one coaster that goes upside down. There are tons of options they can look into that are realistic and great to fix that. Gerstlauer Infinity or Eurofighter, RMC Raptor, Small B&M Invert, Vekoma Suspended Thrill Coaster. All of these would be fine. When will this come? Who knows? They've already gone 14 years. They don't seem to be in any hurry. In the end, I do recommend that you go out and visit Valleyfair. It's not the joke that some people make it out to be. It may be neglected in terms of investments, but it's not a sad park by any means. If you've been to Valleyfair, let me know what you thought of it. Where do you rank this park in the chain? Would you put it closer to the middle or the bottom? Also, what do you think is the best and worst coaster in the park? Sound off in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like. That's the best way to show your support for the channel. And if you're new here and love coasters, be sure to sub and check out my park review playlist. Also, check out my links below for my Discord server, where you can chat with other fans of the channel, and my second channel, where I post copyright-free off-road footage. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.